My wife said I was being dramatic for checking her location, so I showed up and caught her where she promised she'd never go. A little background. My name is Alex, 34. My wife is Jenna, 32. We've been married 5 years, together for 9 before that. We both work. I'm in a steady office job. She's on the client side at a marketing firm where schedules blow up and lines with coworkers blur. For most of our marriage, things were fine in the everyday way. Bills paid, a dependable grocery rotation, backyard beer on Sundays. She and I had done big things. Bought the house, rescued a dog, moved states for her job. We talked about kids, but kept postponing it for practical reasons. The slow problem was small and stupid feeling at first. Jenna started taking more late meetings and jibed about needing the space to vent after work. She'd be quieter at home and more attached to her phone. I'm not the jealous type usually. I never had reason until little things stacked. Texts that disappeared when she left the room. A perfume smell on a sleeve, she said, was from the subway. The kind of half answers you give yourself because admitting you're suspicious feels dramatic. We had one argument a month earlier where I asked straight, "Are you seeing someone?" And she laughed and told me I was being ridiculous and paranoid. She said I could not check her phone, that our marriage wasn't a reality TV show. We argued, and then she said, calmly, "If you're going to be acting like that, maybe you should stop checking our shared location timeline. You're making a big deal out of nothing." We had used location sharing casually for ages, a convenience thing. Find My on our phones, family sharing. It's been useful. Find each other at festivals, see who stopped for groceries. I had never abused it. But after that conversation, I couldn't let it sit. Not because I wanted to punish her, but because something about the new pattern felt like a wedge. 2 nights later, I checked to Find My map while she was in a meeting. Her little dot was on the other side of town, pinned at a hotel, the Meridian Suites, one we joked about before as that place people go to when they want to be secret. It was 11:17 p.m. I texted, "You okay? Meeting running late?" She replied, "Ugh, yes, a client dinner. Sorry, can't talk." The tone felt clipped. I decided to drive over, not to start a scene in the moment, but to see with my own eyes. I told myself I would turn around if I saw nothing suspicious. At the hotel bar, she was there, yes, but not alone. She was leaning close across the bar to a man I didn't know, laughing with a kind of ease I hadn't seen with me in months. He wrapped an arm around the back of her chair when a waitress came by. They were tasting cocktails, trading private jokes. They hadn't noticed me yet. For a few seconds, I just stood behind a pillar, the idea of walking up and accusing her feeling so ridiculous it hurt. Then she looked up, and our eyes met. Her smile vanished. I walked to the bar. I didn't shout. I said, "Jenna." She went pale and pushed away, saying, "Alex, what are you doing here?" I asked who the man was. She answered fast, "Oh, this is Tom from work. It's a networking thing." Tom's hand tightened on his glass. The man introduced himself, shook my hand, said something like, "He must be the husband," with a polite smile that felt like an inspection. I stayed calm in front of them, which surprised me. I asked for a minute and took Jenna outside. In the doorway, she started with the story I'd heard before. Client dinner, rough quarter, nothing to worry about. I told her I'd tracked her location and that the dot had been on the hotel, not the client's restaurant downtown. She snapped, "You tracked me? That's a violation." Then she said something else. "You're always trying to control me, Alex." I told her I wasn't trying to control her. I wanted honesty. She crossed her arms and said she'd promised never to go to the Meridian again. Years ago, she'd told me she had a stupid night there with someone she regretted and she'd sworn it was off limits. I told her that promise felt like a line and that she'd crossed it. Her reply was sharp. "You are making this into a story. I'm not the villain here." The argument was loud enough that a couple of people in the doorway fell silent and looked our way. She walked back into the bar and Tom followed. I sat down near the bar numb. That night, she returned home 3 hours later than she said, and said she and Tom had run into each other after an event and had coffee to catch up. It didn't add up. The hotel, the way they'd been leaning, the way she'd looked when she saw me. I felt like the ground under me shifted. I didn't go nuclear on the spot. I went quiet, packed an overnight bag, and slept at a friend's place. I wanted time to think and not say something I'd later regret. Update, 2 days later. I came back the next morning and asked for a real conversation. She agreed to talk, but only if I left the past 48 hours out of text, and we did it face to face. We sat at the kitchen table. I told her honestly what I'd seen and why I'd gone to the hotel. She admitted she'd been to the Meridian that night, but insisted it was innocent, a late-night private conversation with a client who was staying there, or she'd been helping Tom with a pitch and they'd been packing up. I told her that the problem wasn't just the Meridian, it was the promise. She had said a long time ago she'd never go back there because of what had happened before we were married. She'd promised. She'd broken that promise and lied about where she'd been. She cried then, which threw me off more than anything. Quiet, shameful crying. She said it had been stupid and she was weak and admitted she'd enjoyed the attention Tom gave her in a way she couldn't explain. She also accused me of betraying her privacy by watching her location. She had a point there. We argued about privacy, about who gets what location access, and whether being in a partnership means total shared access. The conversation spiraled, sometimes in a name-calling, and sometimes back to the practical. Where were you from 9 to 11? Who is Tom? She finally told me enough to hurt. She said she and Tom had kissed once that night, earlier in the evening, in a stairwell. It had been sudden, and then they'd pulled back and decided to not let it go further. That admission landed like a physical blow. The thing that stung more was that she'd come home and told me the client dinner story, the half-truth. She said she'd been ashamed and afraid to tell me, and that she'd intended to stop it there. I asked for space. She asked me to quit checking her location and to trust her. I told her trust had to be rebuilt, not demanded. She agreed to stop seeing Tom socially, to block him on social platforms, and to go to couples counseling. I asked for proof she'd actually cut contact. She gave me a message where she told Tom she couldn't see him anymore. I kept the screenshot, but it felt thin. We started counseling 2 weeks later. The counselor wanted to hear the raw stuff first. Why I checked her location, why she went to Meridian, why she'd kissed him. Jenna said she'd been lonely and flattered and wasn't thinking of a lasting thing, which didn't comfort me. The counselor made a point I keep turning over. Affairs, even small ones, are often less about sex and more about a person feeling seen in ways they are not at home. Update, 6 weeks later. Counseling was messy and slow. For every moment Jenna owned a choice, there'd be 3 where she folded and told me I was over-controlling for asking details. For every step she took toward transparency, she took a step back when friends asked for her side. People are weird. Some of her friends said I was controlling for checking location. Others said she should have told me the truth. I was in the middle of public opinion in a way I hadn't asked for. Jenna cut contact with Tom and asked HR at her company to reassign any direct client work that would put them in close contact. HR did a quiet shuffle, which helped. She also started individual therapy because she said she kept looking for validation in ways that were dangerous to our marriage. That sounded good on paper. She showed me the first session notes voluntarily. I felt better seeing her take it seriously. But the practical wounds were still fresh. I'd find little signs of her backtracking, a deleted message thread here, a defensive tone there. She'd promised to stop checking her phone in bed and then leave it face down on the counter. We argued about boundaries. Is it reasonable to ask for access to a timeline if you've been lied to? Is it reasonable to expect flawless trust if a promise was broken? There are no clean answers. A girlfriend of Jenna's posted a vague story on social about the difficulty of confusing people while trying to be good, and it blew up with everyone choosing sides. I asked her to tone down public posts until we had some clarity. She said I was trying to control her speech. It felt like the whole world had an opinion on our private failing. At the 6-week mark, we took a weekend trip the counselor recommended. No phones past 9 p.m., no work talk, a long drive. It was small, stupid, human, and it helped a bit. She held my hand during a sunset, and I felt something like us again, but the scar was there. Update, 4 months later. Things improved and relapsed in cycles. Counseling continued. Jenna worked through honesty in a way she hadn't before. She admitted the kiss had been more than physical. It was a moment where she felt alive in a way she hadn't felt in months of domestic sameness. That didn't fix anything, but it helped me understand that the issue at the heart was not a neat affair narrative, but a slow drift of 2 people not noticing that the surface has become stronger than the center. We set rules. Full transparency on outside contacts that felt risky, monthly check-ins with the counselor, and a new ask first rule about location sharing. Jenna agreed to delete the Meridian off-limits idea from jokes and be honest when she went places. I agreed to stop opening apps I had no business opening and to signal when I needed to look at something. It wasn't all drama-free. We both had nights we wondered if it was worth it. There were quiet times I spent at friends' couches and resigned mornings when we pretended the issue wasn't a live wire between us. The dog took up the couch and became our neutral party. Final update, 9 months later. 9 months in from the night, at the Meridian, we're still married. That's the basic fact. Does that mean everything is back to normal? No, it's different. Jenna's been honest in ways she wasn't before, and I've learned to ask without staging an ambush. We both went to individual therapy in addition to couples. The counselor once said to us, trust is proof over time. That's the only metric that made sense. Practical things changed. Jenna stopped going to the after-work industry parties that blurred lines. She told colleagues about our agreement in a way that didn't invite gossip. She changed her relationship with attention online. I stopped doing midnight location checks and started saying what I felt before suspicion calcified into accusation. We set guardrails. No secret meetings in hotels. If you're at a work dinner where alcohol is involved, check in at the end of the night. If either of us feels drawn to someone else in a way that threatens the marriage, we bring it to counseling immediately. Relationships are ugly and patient. There were consequences. A couple of friendships dissolved because people couldn't stand taking sides. My own family asked questions that stung and made cold judgment. Jenna and I lost a few easy comforts, spontaneous late-night dates, the way we used to assume the other was fine, but we gained something like competence at communicating hard things before they rot into resentments. Would I do the same thing again? Check her location and show up? That's the question people ask, and it's the messy one. I don't recommend using shared location to police a partner. It can be invasive and breed its own problems. But I also know what it feels like to find a private little clues and have them minimized until you start doubting yourself. I would have preferred not to be the person who had to prove it, and I wish we'd sought counseling the minute I first felt uneasy rather than letting silent things stack. If you're reading this because you suspect something, document facts, ask for a calm conversation, consider a neutral third party before you do anything dramatic, and be prepared that the truth might hurt more than your suspicion. If you're reading this because you've been on the other side, the one who broke a promise, be honest early and accept the consequences. Repair is possible, but it is slow and it costs things. We're still together. We're still working. I can't promise we'll be together forever. I can say this. 9 months later, the house is softer. Jenna meets me halfway more often. I stopped being the person who checks a map at 2 a.m. And when I asked her recently if she regretted going to the Meridian that night, she said, quietly, every day. That felt like an answer.